Hey, Canucks fans, let's talk about Elias Pettersson's next contract. We know he's in the final year of his second 3-year deal. He had his 3-year ELC and then his 3-year bridge deal. And we knew that as of July 1st of 2023, he was able to sign a contract extension. We also know that there was a lot of consternation in the market when he did that interview with Elliot Friedman from Sweden. And he basically said he wasn't prepared to sign at the time because he wanted to concentrate on getting a good start to the season. And I think a lot of people were freaking out. Oh, does that mean he doesn't want to play here anymore? Does that mean he's not going to sign here? Whereas others were saying, no, this is just, it makes sense. After many years of losing here, it would make sense to see how well the team is doing. Well, the team is doing very well. And as I record this on Saturday afternoon, we know that they're fighting for Vegas for the top spot in Pacific Division. We know that PD is tied with Miller and Hughes for the league in scoring. So this year has basically started off as well as it could. And there's also some good news on the contract front. We've heard from Frank Saravalli, we've heard from Rick Dhaliwal and others that actually Patrick Allvin and PD and his agent, or PD's agent probably more appropriately, they're at least talking. They're not, a deal isn't imminent. They're not almost there, but at least it's not like they kind of just left it from the summer and they're not going to worry about it till later in the season. They actually are talking, and apparently there's being some progress being made. So that's awesome. That's a good thing for anyone who wants PD to stay with the Vancouver Canucks. So if we can be confident that they're at least talking and they're chipping away at a contract extension, that is great. So then the question then becomes, of course, for how long and for how much? And I must admit that up until I'd say a few days ago, I would say, well, it's a no-brainer. You sign him for the 8-year maximum allowed, and that way you lock up your best forward, your foundational forward, for 8 more years, and then 3 plus 3 plus 8. That means the first 14 years of Elias Pettersson's career will be here in Vancouver. But then I thought, and I hear more industry insiders talk about this, and even other fans, fellow fans, they're saying, no, it actually is more smarter to do a 4 or 5 year contract instead of an 8-year contract. Because what happens, God forbid, if PD isn't good by year 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of his 8-year contract? What happens if somehow he goes downhill as soon as he turns 30, which would be halfway through his next contract? So why not do 4 or 5 years, get him up to 30, 31 years old, and then see what happens from there? And I must admit, this is contrary to what I was thinking up until a few days ago, but this is the way I'm leaning as well. So let's talk about what this might look like. PD's first contract, 3 years. His second contract was another 3 years at $7.35 million. So I know before the season started, I said maybe he's going to sign for 6 or 7 years for $10.5 to $11 million. I think he's blown that out of the water, given his amazing start and the great start of the team. So let's use, for example, 8 times 12.5. 8 years times $12.5 million per season. That's a clean $100 million total contract. So let's just use that as for comparison purposes. If he signs 4 years instead, and that would still mean his first 10 years with the Canucks, right? 3, 3, and 4. And by the way, I want to bring up Austin Matthews because a lot of people bring up Austin Matthews as a comparable. Austin Matthews did his 3-year ELC, and then he signed a 5-year deal after that, which only took him to 8 years. It actually bought 1 year of unrestricted free agency. So Toronto could have lost Austin Matthews after only just one season, his 8th season of being a UFA. Now, of course, they signed him then to another 4-year contract after that. So now that's 12 years, right, for Austin Matthews with Toronto. 3 plus 5 plus 4. And his number, his 925, usual rookie ELC. Then his second contract was 5 years at 11.6. And then his next contract was another 4 years at 13.25. So let's just say that Matthews is doing very well. Contrast that to PD. So maybe would it make sense for PD to take a 4 or 5 year deal? And like I said, because maybe somehow his play falls off after a few seasons. So we're going to use 12.5 million times 8, $100 million player. We're going to use 12.5 times 8 as our comparable. You could argue that PD could take 2 4-year contracts instead. The first one with the Canucks and the second one with either the Canucks or with another team. And let's just say if you go 4 years instead of 8, you're signing for 11.5 instead of 12.5. So let's say you make a little bit less because you're not signing for as long. But let's say he blows up, he continues his upward trajectory, and then after the end of that third contract of 4 years, he's now, and remember the salary cap's going up. So let's just say that he's now a $14 million player. A $14 million player by doing a 2 4-year contracts instead of an 8-1. So the first one that I said, it was 4 times 11.5. That is $46 million. And the second one, did I say 14? Did I say 14? So 4 times 14 is 56. So 56 was 46. So a very small example, but now by doing that, 46 plus 56, I mean a small minimum effect. Now he's made $102 million over 8 years as opposed to $100 million. But let's say that the jump is much more pronounced. Let's say he's a $14.5 million or $50 million player by the time his next contract is over. 4 times 15, exaggerating a little bit, that is now $60 million plus the 4 times 11.5, which is 46. So now he's a $106 million player instead of $100 million. And that that difference could even be bigger. So I think that's the first thing I want to bring up is, and I wanted to use numbers that were sort of realistic, but not too crazy. So he's either 8 times 12.5 at $100 million, or he's 4 times 11.5 plus 4 times 15, and now he's a $106 million player. So that's $6 million difference by signing for 2 shorter deals as opposed to 1 longer term deal. Now you might say, well, what's the difference between 106 million and 100 million? I don't know. For me, who doesn't make anywhere close to that, 6 million does seem like a big difference, but for maybe a player of that stature, it doesn't make much of a difference. Remember, for every dollar that you make or PD is going to make, it's a one fewer dollar that the Canucks have to spend. So that's another thing I think is when players go for these long-term home run contracts, it's kind of counterintuitive, but you're in essence hamstringing your own team. So that's another thing to think about. Whereas if you go 2 shorter ones, then the team also has the ability to make a decision after that first contract is done. So that's another consideration to think about. And finally, where does an 8-year contract versus a 4-year contract line up with the other good players on this team? After this season, we know that Quinn Hughes still has 3 more seasons after the season at 7.85. After this season, we know that Demko has 2 more seasons at $5 million. And then we know after the season, JT Miller still has another 6 seasons to go. So if you're lining PD up with Hughes' contract and with Demko's contract, it's not a perfect exercise because, like I said, after the season, Hughes only has 3 years left. PD only has Demko only has 2 years left. So even if PD signs a 4-year extension after this, he's still 1 year past Hughes. He's still 2 years past Demko. But of course, then it gets reversed. Then when it's time for Hughes' next contract extension, he's looking to see what PD has done. And then when it comes time for Demko's next contract extension, he's looking to see what PD has done as well. So you can't simply say, well, PD should only sign for as long as Hughes and Demko are signed. Well, firstly, Demko and Hughes don't have the same end time for their contracts. And that would mean only another 3 years then for PD to line them up with the end of Hughes' contract. And then that doesn't make sense to me. 3 years is too short. Then you're going 3 contracts of 3 years. You could lose PD after only 9 years. So I'd say the minimum you go is 4. Obviously, the maximum you go is 8. But my whole point of this video is that I am now more open to a shorter term contract, a 4 or 5 year contract for PD, as opposed to 8. And that's because it gives both PD a chance to increase his value. It gives the Canucks a chance to not be locked in for 3 or 4 seasons that they might not want to be. I know it sounds so strange to say. And then you better line up PD's contract, the end, closer at least to the end of Hughes. Demko, a little bit of stretch, but more to Hughes. So a few things to think about. I would love your feedback, Canucks fans. What do you think? Sitting here today in the middle of November, knowing that PD's contract expires at the end of the season, would you prefer him to sign an 8-year max term contract with us for maybe $100 million? Or would you be open to a 4 or 5 year contract for a little bit less AAV, a bit of a risk of losing him after that, but maybe, just maybe, it's better for the team overall, and maybe it's better for PD as well, and that's what he's going to negotiate hard for. So Canucks fans, let me know your thoughts. Now that I've laid this out for you, do you still prefer that the Canucks lock PD up for 8 years, the maximum term, maybe $100 million. And that way he knows that he's our franchise player for the next 8 seasons and we have him for the first 14 years of his career? Or are you, like me, a bit more open now to a shorter contract, 4 or 5 years? Basically, it's could be better for the team. You don't lock into Petey just in case his play falls off. You closely or more closely align it to the end of, say, a Quinn Hughes's contract. And maybe Petey's also, it saves a bit, the team saves a bit of money as well. And maybe Petey is also more angling towards that because it gives him more flexibility ultimately. So Canucks fans, let me know your thoughts. What's the ideal term length? And then you can talk about money as well. Shout out to my sponsors, Van City Experts Real Estate, Perform and Transform, Personal Training, Weight Loss. Thank you, legendary Lucas Gates, legendary Carol Bovenlander, legendary Andrew Chang, and to Hall of Fame and franchise members for your support as well. And thanks to all of you for watching, for liking, and for subscribing. On your way out, subscribe, like the video. You can become a member. You can upgrade your membership. You can leave a tip and definitely leave a comment. Let me know your ideal contract length for Elias Pettersson's next contract with the Vancouver Canucks. Stay safe, stay healthy, take care of yourselves, and take care of each other. See you tonight at 11 p.m. for my Sunday night live stream. God bless, and go Canucks go.